Picture this, deep in the Himalayas, on the sacred slopes of a mountain known as the Bliss-Giving Goddess, a nuclear device lies lost in the ice. It's a forgotten ghost of the Cold War, a top-secret CIA mission where high-stakes espionage slammed into the brutal reality of high-altitude mountaineering. Today, we're going to unpack the incredible story of how a goddess and a bomb ended up sharing the same mountain.
So, right at the heart of this story, you've got this massive contradiction. You have a place of incredible spiritual importance, the source of the holy Ganges River, that is also the final resting place of a lost piece of nuclear technology. So the big questions are, how on earth did this happen? And maybe more importantly, what does it mean for us today?
All right, first things first, let's get to know the mountain. Nanda Devi isn't just some chunk of rock and ice. To millions, it's a deity. Towering over 25,000 feet, it's India's second highest peak, and it's revered as a sanctuary, a place of profound spiritual power. But back in the 1960s, this holy ground was chosen for something, well, something very unholy. So how does a sacred mountain get dragged into the middle of the Cold War? Well, it all comes down to a super-secret partnership between two nations and a mission with a pretty simple codename, Operation Hat. You have to remember what the world was like back then. The mid-60s were incredibly tense. India was still recovering from a really rough war with China in '62. And then, just 2 years later, China goes and tests its first nuclear weapon. I mean, for both the US and India, this was a massive red alert. They desperately needed to know what China's missile program was capable of.
And here's the thing, the US had a real problem, a tech problem. Their early spy satellites were kind of like cameras without microphones. Yeah, they could snap a grainy photo of a launch site, but they were totally deaf. They couldn't pick up a missile's telemetry. And that's the good stuff, the radio signals that tell you its range, its payload, everything. To capture that data, you needed a clear, unobstructed line of sight. And geographically, there was literally only one place on the planet that had that perfect vantage point into China's main test site, the roof of the world, the Indian Himalayas.
So geography basically forced their hand. It led to this completely unprecedented, top-secret team-up between the CIA and India's Intelligence Bureau. And their mission needed two very specific things. First, the absolute best mountain climbers on the planet. And second, a piece of technology tough enough to survive the most brutal environment imaginable. Okay, but think about it. How are you going to power a spy station up there? We're talking minus 40-degree temperatures, 100-mile-an-hour winds. Regular batteries, they'd freeze solid in minutes. Solar panels, they'd be buried under snow in a day. Nope, there was only one answer, and it was nuclear. So the CIA turned to NASA for some tech, a snap generator. You can basically think of it as a nuclear battery, just chugging away, powered by the heat from decaying plutonium. And we really can't overstate how potent this thing was. The fuel was plutonium-238. That stuff is seriously radioactive. And get this, it has a half-life of nearly 88 years. So on one hand, it's this miracle of engineering that can provide power for decades. On the other hand, it is a huge radiological hazard. But the first, most immediate problem was just its sheer weight. 56 kilograms. That's about 125 pounds. Now, just stop and picture that for a second. You're trying to haul that weight up one of the most difficult mountains in the world, into air so thin they call it the death zone. It is an absolutely insane Herculean task. And this is where the story gets really wild, because this device had this strange dual nature. The plutonium decay gave off this intense, constant heat. So in that freezing cold, it was literally a lifesaver. The local Sherpas and porters, who had no idea what it really was, actually revered it. They called it Guru Rinpoche, the precious master, and they would actually fight over who got to carry it because it kept them warm. They saw its warmth as a divine blessing, while the American handlers knew it was the signature of lethal radiation. Just incredible. The team they put together for this was basically the Avengers of mountaineering. You had the Indian lead, Captain Kohli, who was a national hero. The American lead was Barry Bishop, a total legend from National Geographic who'd already climbed Everest. The whole crew was just the best of the best from both countries. And their official cover story for being there? Just some simple, high-altitude research for the Air Force. Yeah, right. So fast forward to the autumn of 1965, after months of training and a massive logistical effort, the team is finally on Nanda Devi. They're making good progress, getting close to the summit, but the mountain had other plans.
They're up at 24,000 feet, and then, bam, a monster blizzard just slams into them. Captain Kohli has to make a choice that no one should ever have to make. Does he push on and risk killing his whole team, or does he turn back? He made the right call. He chose his men. But trying to get down that mountain in a storm while carrying that 125-pound device, that was a suicide mission. So they made the only decision they could. They found a sheltered spot, a crevice in the rock, stashed the device, and secured it. The plan was simple: leave it for the winter and come back for it in the spire. When the team came back the next May, ready to finish the job, what they found was just shocking. The spot where they left the device, the ropes, the anchors, the entire rock ledge it was sitting on, it was just gone, wiped clean. A massive avalanche had torn down the side of the mountain, taking everything with it. The nuclear generator was buried somewhere under thousands of tons of rock and ice. It had vanished. You can imagine the panic. A frantic, top-secret search was launched, but it was no use. The device was gone. But believe it or not, the failure on Nanda Devi, that's not where the story ends. In what is just an incredible display of persistence, the same joint team got back together. In 1967, they went up again. This time, they installed a second nuclear-powered listening device, but on the neighboring peak of Nanda Devi. And this time, it worked. It operated for months, sent back incredibly valuable intel, and then they successfully went back up and brought it home. Mission accomplished, sort of. For 13 long years, the story of that first lost device remained one of the world's best-kept secrets. But then, in 1978, an expose in Outside magazine blew the whole thing wide open. You can imagine the chaos. It created this huge political firestorm in India, and it actually forced the Prime Minister to stand up in Parliament and admit that, yes, this crazy secret mission really did happen. And that brings us to today, and the device's enduring legacy. That plutonium core is going to stay dangerously radioactive for centuries. The primary fear, the big one, is that as the glacier moves and grinds, that pressure could eventually crush the device's casing, releasing potent carcinogens directly into the headwaters of the holy Ganges River. This anxiety is so real, so embedded in the region, that during devastating floods in 2021, many locals immediately pointed to the heat from the lost nuclear device as the cause. So, somewhere up there, buried deep in the ice, that device is still sitting there, its plutonium core slowly decaying. So you have to ask yourself, was the mission a necessary risk in a dangerous world, or was it just a profound act of hubris? The Bliss-Giving Goddess holds her secret close, leaving us with one final lingering question. Is she protecting a Cold War relic, or is she guarding a ticking time bomb?